Hello children. Today let's learn how to make an interview. This skill is from the lesson Environment from Unit 6 Part A. On to the pattern to follow. Give a brief introduction of the person mentioning his or her great achievement. Then greet the person. Then prepare a questionnaire. And you can use these questions for preparing the questionnaire. And it would be better to use appropriate linkers such as of course, well, however, meanwhile, and so on. And never ask questions from personal life. On to the question here. You have read that Wangari Maathai started the Green Belt movement and also fought for equal rights for women in Africa. Prepare an interview of Wangari Maathai with NHK Radio. So in this interview, I feel you can have a gist of the entire lesson wherein you get a synopsis of what you learnt in the entire lesson. Interview of Wangari Maathai. Wangari Maathai started the Green Belt movement in Africa and fought for equal rights for women in Africa. So this is the introduction about Wangari Maathai. You can even write she won the Nobel Peace Prize. That also you can write. Then NHK Radio. What made you think about environment? Wangari Maathai. When we asked the people about their problems, they said they wanted drinking water, food, energy, building material, fodder for animals, and all this came from the land. Hence, we started rehabilitating the land. So, whatever is in the text, that only whatever we remember, the gist of it, we are putting it in the interview here. Because already the text is in the form of interview only. NHK Radio. Do you think peace is connected to a good environment? Wangari Maathai. Yes, of course. When there is a war, ultimately the land is spoiled. For a country to be peaceful, good management of natural resources, equitable distribution of resources is necessary, which can happen if and only if people have democratic space. Hence, people should be given space to practice their rights. NHK Radio. How was the environment during your childhood days? Wangari Maathai. It was green and pristine. Then the Britishers colonized and cut the indigenous forests and planted exotic trees which exhausted the underground water ruthlessly, leading to water scarcity. So we see that Africa is a dark continent and it gradually turned to a place wherein there was no water, no clean drinking water. And what was the reason? It was because of the cutting down of indigenous forests and the plantation of exotic trees. Let's see what happens next. NHK Radio. How were you successful in motivating the women to plant the saplings? Wangari Maathai. I invited foresters to teach them. Since it proved complicated, I suggested them to treat the seeds the way they treated the seeds of other food crops. It worked out. So she is telling in which way they had approached the afforestation. That is when she called the foresters, as it was difficult for them to understand. It was all Greek and Latin for them. They couldn't understand. She went to the other way around. That is, she suggested to treat those seeds just like the seeds of any food crops. Then NHK Radio. What made the people to react to your call? Wangari Maathai. It was a need. They could understand that it was essential to plant a sapling today so that they could rehabilitate the environment and have a full-fledged life in the future. So it was a need, and she explains how much it was a need and what was the main intention or what was the idea behind the people reacting or responding to her call. NHK Radio. What was the transformation that you could see with the Green Belt movement, and what are the consequences that occurred? What all happened? What are the results? Wangari Maathai. The first important transformation was that the ordinary illiterate women could become self-reliant and could live their life with dignity. The second is that the landscape became clean and the revival of the local flora and fauna. The third transformation was the willingness of the people to fight for their rights and to protect their forests. These are the major transformations which are very much required for the sustainable management of the resources. The first thing is women getting their dignity, where they are no more used or looked at as commodities. They were had a life for themselves, they had a dignity for themselves, they were self-reliant, they could earn for themselves. They need not spread their hands always in front of their menfolk. So this made them dignified, self-reliant, and they got their self-respect. And the second one is the landscape, the cleanliness. The whole landscape where they used to dispose garbage, maybe as they had started planting, all the garbage were eliminated from there and it became a clean landscape. And the best part is all the animals and the birds and the local plants which had disappeared previously, all that came back to life. That is a revival. And the most important one is the willingness of the people. They would never allow anyone else to come and cut their forests, because they are the ones who had rehabilitated the land. They are the ones who have planted. So there are no ways that they would allow anyone to cut the forest. So in the future there won't be any water scarcity. This is the most important transformation. Then NHK radio. Wow, that's great. What is your message to the society? Wangari Maathai. The greatest activity one can do is to plant a tree which will remain long after we are gone. So the one and only message from the beginning to the end, what Wangari Maathai says is, if you want to live, if you want your life really meaningful in this world, plant a tree so that it would it would remain for our future generation. Though we may die, we may disappear from this earth, the plant would remain, the tree would remain and tell numerous stories about us. Hope you all understood how to make an interview. Please comment in the comment box below and do let us know your suggestions. And if it was really useful to you, click the like button. Thank you children, thank you for watching and have a great day.